Good morning, everyone. Can you guys stand? Let's lift our voices and sing together. Today our theme is the goodness of God. We're going to sing about His faithfulness and His love. And as we sing, let's just remember the amazing things that He's done in our lives. And as we sing, let's worship Him for all that. I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hand. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I'll sing it all my life. All my life you have been faithful. So good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, darkest night. Like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. So good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Sing your goodness. Your goodness is running after me. Oh, your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after me. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. Every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Yes, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Amen. Hey, will you pray with us here this morning? God, we are just just here to worship you. We are certainly thankful for your goodness and that you run after us. Through your son, Jesus, you pursued us, and we can be part of your family forever. God, you adopted us into your family through your son, and we just celebrate that this morning. God, I pray that you'd find us faithful. We know your faithfulness is just forever. And God, I pray that our faithfulness would rise up to meet you and who you are, and our worship would be worthy of who you are. God, thank you for this morning, the chance to gather and sing and lift our voices and to study your word. And again, I pray that you'd find us faithful, and we are grateful to be able to worship you here this morning as a church family. In Jesus' name, amen. You guys can grab a seat for just a minute. Welcome to Allen Bible Church. It's great to be here together, again, worshiping, praising the Lord together in song, and doing it here in person, doing it online. We're just glad to be together as a church family. A few things this morning. First, just as we always do, a reminder that part of our worship can be giving, and there's 3 ways to do that. You can mail a check into our church office, you can do that online through our website, and you can do it through texting. And so those options are up there listed above, but just want to remind us to continue to worship even through our giving. There are a few things happening this coming up here in the next few weeks I want to make sure everybody here is aware of. So beyond Sundays, a few opportunities to connect. May the 12th, which is a Wednesday night, there's going to be a discovery class. We haven't been able to do that in a while because of COVID and other things going on. So if you're newer to the church, you want to check out more about Allen Bible Church, possibly then take steps towards joining us as a team here to serve together and serve this community, we'd love to have you come on May the 12th. That's a Wednesday night. So you can look online, sign up for that, and we'd love to welcome you to that and enjoy that time with you. And then this coming week on May the 4th is a Tuesday night. There's going to be a men's fajita dinner at Buddy's house. It's kind of a culmination of our study through Elijah as men, and we're taking the different groups that have been meeting throughout the week and combining them here to enjoy just a fajita cookout. So you can sign up for that so we know who's coming. That's this Tuesday night at 6:30 at Buddy's house. We'd love to see you there. But again, please sign up so we know that you're coming. And then a few announcements regarding next Sunday. A few things happening next Sunday. They're great. We're going to be doing a parent commissioning. And as you've probably heard us talk about, if you have a newer born child, baby or even toddler, and haven't been able to celebrate that with us as a church family and not only dedicate your child to the Lord, but then also for us to come alongside you and say as parents, how do we commission you into raising that child up in the way of the Lord? We'd love to do that with you next Sunday. So sign up deadline for that is tomorrow. So if you haven't done that, again, we'd love for you to participate, but please sign up so we know you're coming. Also next Sunday is when we're going to start doing our kids' life in the morning for K through 4th grade. So we've already been doing that for the younger kids here on Sunday mornings. They've been doing their classes for those that want to do that. Starting next Sunday, there'll be availability for K through 4 to join in and do kids' life stuff. So we look forward to ministering to kids in that way. It's been awesome to have them in here. They'll still be in here for part of the worship gathering, but then we'll send them out so they can have some more age-specific time to learn and grow together starting next Sunday. And the next Sunday is also when we're starting a new sermon series called #Parenting Goals. And so we look forward to joining you, or for you joining us next Sunday for those different celebrations and also those different ministry endeavors. And now we're going to continue to worship in music. Thank you.
All right, if you guys can stand to your feet. We're going to continue to sing today about God's faithfulness. God of Abraham, you're the God of covenant, faithful promises. And time again, you are proven to do just what you say. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From History can prove that there's nothing you can't do. You're faithful and you're true. Though the storms may come, the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast. And let my heart burn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Oh, great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great are you, Lord. So I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my open firm foundation. Can never let me down. Oh, I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my open firm foundation. You'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my open firm foundation. You'll never let me down. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Can we sing this together? And great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever will be. And great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto thee. And when the sun comes up, satisfy us, for the day has passed us by. For our hearts forget all your goodness, satisfy us with your love. For you satisfy us, Lord, to number our days on earth and give us more wisdom in the secret heart as you display amazing grace through Jesus Christ for us. Oh, teach us, Lord, to number our days on earth and give us more wisdom in the secret heart as you display amazing grace through Jesus Christ for us. When the sun comes up, satisfy us before the day has passed us by. Before our hearts forget all your goodness, satisfy us with your love. When the sun comes up, satisfy us before the day has passed us by. Before our hearts forget all your goodness, satisfy us with your love. Satisfy us with your love. God, we thank you today that you have been our shelter, you have been our dwelling place. God, in the midst of all that's gone on in our lives, in the midst of everything that's gone on in this world in the past year, the one thing that we can count on, the one thing that is constant and secure in our life is you. And I thank you that we have you to hold on to. You are our refuge. When it seems like everything else around us is shaken, we can stand on the firm foundation of Christ. And we thank you for that today. We love you, and we thank you for this moment we've had in your presence to worship you, to connect with you, to come together with the body of Christ and lift up your name. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks for worshiping with us, guys. Y'all can take your seats.
Thank you, Nathan and the Dougs, for leading us this morning. Goodness. Well, as you can see, you'll throw up the first slide there. There's an Uno card. What I want you to do as we're going into the message today, I'm just going to keep talking. It'll work itself out, okay? I want you to imagine an Uno card game. Maybe it's with your friends. You've had a dinner party, and it's kind of gotten competitive. I don't know if y'all are that way. The Lyles, we're not real competitive on certain things like sports. At some point, we're a little bit Tony Romo, like, hey, if losing to the Eagles in the playoffs is the worst thing, like we're a little bit like that, even though you'd think Coach Buddy would be like, win, win, win at all costs, get their throats. But we're actually competitive in board games. So imagine you're with friends, you're having a dinner party, and an Uno card game has broken out. Been going for several rounds, and the player to your right has won most of the night. Most of the hands as they've gone around, that player to your right has won. And once again, with a lot of snark, the player to your right declares, Uno. No one else is even close, right? You got like 28 cards. Or actually a couple of your other players do. As the play works its way around, he said Uno, right? It's working its way around. You're pretty sure that your snarky opponent is holding a red card in his hand. and a red 4 sits on the discard pile, and you think it is over, and you are just, when suddenly the player to your left plays a 4, but it's green. And then a smile flashes over your face as you put down with authority a green reverse. Now, if you hadn't played, if you're not competitive in board games, this doesn't mean much. But when Snarky Snarkinson is to your right, and they got red, you're pretty sure, not that you cheated, but you know that they probably have red, and you play a green reverse, and now it works its way around, and when it gets to the person on their right, it's coming this way, they play a wild draw 4. And you're like, yes, justice is happening. And this is keeping Snarky Snarkinson from getting to play, but it also gets him going in the other direction. More and more cards now fanning out in his hands. And he took him farther from that sure win that he and everyone else at the table thought. Well, that reverse happened at just the right time. And it not only reversed Snarky's playing ability in that one time around, but it became a game-changing reversal that led to a winner that no one would have expected, and it changed the mood for the rest of the night. In fact, if you've been at a dinner party with such a game and that's happened, everybody feels a little bit better going home, right? Just admit it, it's okay. But here's the deal, that's a silly illustration that many of us have lived at a dinner party, but a reversal at just the right time is what we are going to experience and see as we re-enter the story of Esther today in chapter 7. You can start finding your way there in your copy of God's Word. But first, I want to give you a little bit of a storyboard to catch us up between chapters 1 and 6 before we read a portion of today's text. If you are looking for it, find Psalms kind of in the middle of your Bible and go to the left. It's right before Psalms, Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job. That's where Esther will be. And a reversal at just the right time is what we're going to see today in Esther. Catching you up, Persia, this is where it's taking place in the 5th century BC. Between Ezra and Nehemiah, basically, chronologically, the people of God's people, the southern kingdom of Judah has been into exile with Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians, but then they're conquered by the Medo-Persians. And the Medo-Persians' foreign policy is, we don't want you to be our slaves in our place. We want to send you back because you helped build our portfolio. And so they send them back. So the Jews actually had an opportunity to go back, but many of them did not return. In fact, this is really between, like, midway through Ezra is where this is taking place time-wise. But I want you to know that Persia is the big bad boy on the block, and the big bad king of Persia is Xerxes, or some of your translations say Ahasuerus. Okay, Ahasuerus might not even be the name, it might be more of a title like Caesar. But he is the ruler. He is a ruler who is governed by his glands. Anything involving money, pushing other people around, or any hormonal impulses, the king is for it. In fact, he shows off by having a 6-month party and parade of all his wealth and power. And then he has another party for 7 days after that where he invites anybody in the town, not just his nobles, which is what the 6-month one was for, to show off and flex. That's what he'd been doing. But he thought in this last party, he thought, I'll really flex by not only showing you my wealth and my military might, etc., but I'm going to show you my woman. And he tries to get his wife Vashti to come exhibit herself in front of a hall of drunken men. And Vashti says, no way. He's embarrassed, and so he's counseled by some of his wise men, and they say, you need to banish her. And so that banishment of Queen Vashti opens the door for an international beauty pageant, of which will be chosen out of hundreds, maybe thousands of the most beautiful women in 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. This is how large Persia is. They gather young women from all over, and out of that, a little orphan or a young orphan woman named Esther is chosen to be the queen. And so as that happens, now he's got his new queen Esther in place. He does not know she's Jewish. Chapter 3, there's a man named Haman. And Haman in my Uno story is the guy to your right. He's arrogant, he's snarky, he's all about himself, and everybody knows it, though he brags, though he is seeking to prove himself. He is constantly trying to find ways to build his identity up by his performance, by how much you would respect him, by how much he ranks versus everybody else. Well, in chapter 3, King Xerxes promotes him to basically second in command, probably like prime minister, if you will. And he is in a good spot, and everybody is commanded to bow down before him wherever he goes. But there's one guy that Haman despises because he will never bow down to him, and seems to almost enjoy letting Haman know, nope, not going to do that. And Haman is infuriated. So his life is, he's sitting pretty, he's doing great, except for every time he sees Mordecai. Mordecai is actually the adoptive father of Esther. They're really cousins, but because she's orphaned, he becomes the father figure in her life and has built into her life up to this point. We don't know how long that was, but he's the one who said, don't tell the king or anyone your nationality, that you're Jewish. Well, he's known as Jewish, Mordecai is, and so Haman hates him so much, he's trying to figure out a way to not only do away with Haman, but he's going to exterminate all the Jews. Now, for every one of us who's been in history class, or even just watched television, that should bring something into your mind of another control freak who wanted to exterminate the Jews. But that is what is happening. It's a treacherous, tenuous, nerve-wracking time for the Jewish people, because Haman decides, and he tricks the king into, if you will, making this decree that on a certain day that they roll dice, or Pur. You've heard of the Feast of Purim. This book of Esther explains to Jews, why do we have the Feast of Purim? I can't even say it. It's because that's what a lot was. You cast lots or dice, you rolled them to see, hey, when's the best day? And Haman sets a date about a year out from when he has the king tricked into authorizing with his signet ring, yes, you can write that decree, Haman, because it sounds like these people are bad for me. I'm going to trust you. And Haman tricks him. So now the Jews everywhere are mourning and wailing. And where are they going to go to escape? From India to Ethiopia. By the time you could get somewhere, that date will hit, and you're going to be taken out by law. If you will, a giant purge or extermination of the Jewish people. And so that is taking place, and that's when Mordecai comes and challenges Esther. We're not going to walk through all of that, but he basically says, Esther, you've got to do something. You cannot remain silent. God has placed you right next to the king as queen, and he says, who knows, this is his famous challenge, who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? He says, if you remain silent, don't think you're going to be safe. God will bring rescue from some other source. You're Jewish. The decree also includes you. No matter how close in proximity you are to the king, you will be killed as well. And so Esther says, okay, fast and pray with me, and I will do it. She resolves to take the risky step of faith to approach the king, because no one should ever approach the king in Persia. If you do without invitation, you most likely lose your life. There was somebody on standby should an interruption come, and the king just look at them and they off with your head. Esther risked this, but she said, if I perish, I perish. And so after fasting and praying, we believe that goes with the fasting, though we're not told that, she approaches the king in a very humble and wise way. She communicates dignity to him and respect to him. She dresses herself in royal robes, and she's walking kind of in an outer court, if you will, so that he could see her from the throne. And as he sees her, he extends the golden scepter, which means you won't lose your head. I'm willing to listen to you. She comes and touches it, and he says, what is it? And Esther very wisely and appropriately says, I want you and Haman, your right-hand man, I want you to come to a banquet that I have prepared for you. And they go. And the way to Xerxes' heart is through his stomach, both food and wine. The guy loved it. And so he wanted to, and Haman loved it. Wait, a private dinner, the king, the queen, and me? This is This is Haman's life. He loves this. He lives for it. And so he goes to that, and as Haman's leaving that, he's kind of skipping home. But he sees Mordecai. Mordecai, who at this point, refuses to almost acknowledge him. And so he goes home, Haman goes home, and he tells his friends and his wife. In fact, he goes and brags about himself. Listen to all the things I've done. And as we said last week, he even says, this is how many sons I have. And we think, well, your wife would say, yeah, I know how many sons we have. And he's just bragging, but it's all empty. He says, but none of this satisfies me as long as Mordecai the Jew is around. And so they say, well, why don't you go build a gallows? Probably gallows, you imagine a hanging. Probably gallows actually is a 75-foot pole. Kind of think of a giant spear made of wood in the ground, 75 feet high. And someone would be, they said, and then you can impale Mordecai on it. It's gruesome, it's grotesque. But this is the world, and this is how dangerous the times are for the Jews, for Mordecai, and even for Esther. So when they're at that first banquet, the king says, okay, Esther, what is it that you want? I'll give you up to half my kingdom. And she says, no, what I'd like is, will you come back to another banquet tomorrow? Let's have another banquet tomorrow, and then I'll tell you my request. So Haman goes home. From that, his wife and friends say, build a gallows to kill Mordecai on it, publicly humiliate and kill him. So now, as he's doing that, probably working late in the night, the guys that he has working on it, while there's still splinters in his hands, if you will, he's going to get to work early in the morning, he decides. But in the middle of the night, the king can't sleep. Chapter 6, verse 1 says, that night the king couldn't sleep. And so he has the book of the Chronicles of the Kingdom read to him, which again is a borer, right? It's a put you to snoozeville. And the king, instead of sleeping, it actually wakes him up because he hears, wait, there was a guy named Mordecai who saved my life from an assassination attempt. What did we do to honor that guy? I mean, we need to thank him. We need to honor him. And they said, well, nothing's been done. He's like, what? So now the king really can't sleep. And he says, who's in the court? Well, Haman has shown up early for work because he can't wait to get in and say, King, I'd like to ask permission to hang Mordecai on the gallows. But ironically, as he comes in, they say, get Haman. Haman, the king wants you. And he says to Haman, what should the king do to honor the man that he desires to honor? And Haman thinks to himself, well, who else would he want to honor except me? And he gives them this elaborate parade, put the king's robe on him, put him on the king's horse, have somebody else parade him around town and says, this is what is done for the man the king desires to honor, delights to honor. It ends up, as Haman is telling this to the king goes, that's a good idea. I think you should do everything you said. Now hurry and go get Mordecai. And Haman is like, ugh. It's not a full-on reverse yet, but it's been a skip, if you will, in the game. And so Haman has to take Mordecai around town. He goes home, and he tells them, and then his wife and friends say, you know what? Your downfall will happen. But before Haman, who's a very good concoctor of plans, before he can concoct a plan, a countermeasure, if you will, look at 6:14. That's where we're going to pick up. Because it's going to sweep us right into the scene of a game-changing reversal, a life-changing turn at just the right time. If you would stand with me in honor of God and His Word. We're going to begin in 6:14, read all of 7 and a couple of verses in Esther 9. Esther 6:14. While they were still talking with him, that's his wife and friends, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried Haman away to the second banquet that Esther had prepared, chapter 7. So the king and Haman went to dine with Queen Esther. And as they were drinking wine on that second day, the king asked, Queen Esther, what is your petition? It will be given to you. What's your request? Even up to half the kingdom it will be granted. Then Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor with you, O king, and if it pleases your majesty, grant me my life. This is my petition, and spare my people. This is my request. For I and my people have been sold for destruction and slaughter and annihilation. If we had merely been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept quiet, because no such distress would justify disturbing the king." King Xerxes asked Queen Esther, "Who is he? Where is the man who dared to do such a thing?" Esther said, "The adversary and enemy is this vile Haman." Then Haman was terrified before the king and queen. The king got up in a rage. He left his wine and he went out into the palace garden. But Haman, realizing that the king had already decided his fate, stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for his life. Just as the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining. The king exclaimed, "Will he even molest the queen while she is with me in the house?" As soon as the word left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. They put a bag over his head. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, "A gallows 75 feet high stands by Haman's house. He had made it for Mordecai, who spoke up to help the king." The king said, "Hang him on it." So they hanged Haman on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the king's fury subsided. And then 2 verses I'm going to read from the screen in chapter 9. After the reversal takes place, Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent letters to all the Jews throughout the provinces of King Xerxes, near and far, to have them celebrate annually the 14th and 15th days of the month of Adar, as the time when the Jews got relief from their enemies, and as the month when their sorrow was turned into joy and their mourning into a day of celebration. He wrote them to observe the days as of feasting and joy and giving presents of food to one another and gifts to the poor. So the Jews agreed to continue the celebration they had begun doing, what Mordecai had written to them. This is God's word. You may be seated. We read that last part because, as I told you, for this book is still read aloud by Jews today on the Feast of Purim. To celebrate, the dice were rolled against them, but God overruled. God reversed what had been decided against them and seemed impossible. And God, what we're going to see for a few moments, is that God is a God of redemptive reversals. He intervenes to take his people from grave danger to great deliverance. I'm calling this redemptive because God's providential working enables him to fulfill his promises, to care for and preserve his people, and to keep his promise of sending Messiah, who was to come from the family tree of Judah. Because see, if the decree of Haman would have been followed through, then all Jews would have been wiped out, including back in Jerusalem, because that was part of the Persian Empire. So the entire family line would have been wiped out, and there would have been no Jesus from the line of Judah. And God ensured that. And so to this day, they celebrate the Feast of Purim to celebrate God's faithfulness and follow-through and his redemption of his people from this situation. Now, what I want us to do is, you can see the revert, you can feel it, right? But I want us to see that God's a God of redemptive reversals, that he's a God of providential timing, that his timing is impeccable. We're going to walk through and just observe in our English Bibles some timing words that really help us see the providential hand of God. So that I don't forget, I may say it again, but if you haven't been with us, one thing that sets the book of Esther apart is that God's name is never mentioned. We don't see anything miraculous like the Red Sea parting or like in Elijah with the prophets of Baal, that God brings fire down from heaven and shows up like that. And so you might wonder, is God absent? He seems silent. And so the book of Esther is artfully written to say, in the ordinary days of life, when you can't see nor hear him necessarily, make no mistake, God is a God of providence. His hand is still at work. Though his name is not named, he is everywhere present. But he also delights in redemptive reversals because it displays his glory. It displays what we sang of his goodness and his faithfulness. I don't know about you, but it did my soul good just now to sing with you, to hear you sing, "Great is your faithfulness." And then to sing, great is your faithfulness to me. And all my life you have been faithful. We see this now in the book of Esther, but know that it is preserved also for us, that the God of Esther is the God of today. And no matter what is going on in our lives, he wants us to be encouraged. Don't mistake my silence for absence. Don't say, all these things, I don't know, they're just coincidence. No, it's providence. He's a God of providence and redemptive reversals. So all these promises seem in jeopardy as the Jews face certain death, legally being exterminated. Yet, when it seems that maybe God is absent, impotent, or doesn't care, he's actually been working all along. What I want to do is go quickly through some of the reversals. We see it in chapter 7 when the gallows were built for Mordecai, that by Haman, that they actually become the instrument of his own undoing and death. Chapter 7, verse 10 or verse 9. Now, I think this tells you a little bit about Haman. Harbona, one of the eunuchs, so he's a servant of the king, he jumps right in, right? The king walks in and he thinks, wait a second, you're trying to molest my wife? I'm out in the garden? I mean, that's it. Harbona seems very eager, which tells us about Haman. I don't think he was liked by anybody in the Uno game. He says, hey, I saw they were working on a pretty impressive gallows, 75 feet high. In fact, Haman was building it for Mordecai. Mordecai is that guy that when you couldn't sleep, you heard about and you wanted to honor, and you did honor. Those were built for Mordecai. And the king says, hang him on that. This is a reversal of justice that God brings about in the midst of all the evil hatchings and plannings and construction from Haman. God actually brings about good through it by bringing justice to Haman. It's Haman who gets impaled on that pole 75 feet high. It's as if part of God's fulfilling of his promises goes all the way back to Genesis 12 when he talks about to Abram that I will bless you, and through you I'll bless all the peoples of the earth, and everyone who blesses you I will bless, and everyone who curses you I will curse. See also Haman. God follows through on it. But then, and we talked about this the last couple of weeks, in each character you can say, well, Esther, yeah, she grows. Maybe she's not doing great at first, but she grows in her faith, in her courage to step into what God's called her to. But Jesus is a better Esther. He knew his time, and he stepped into it faithfully and fully. Or Mordecai, that Jesus is a better Mordecai. But we never, or I shouldn't say never, but we often wouldn't think that Jesus is also like Haman, because though he was not a sinner like Haman, he had no evil hatchings, he did die on a tree for the sake and salvation of God's people. In Galatians 3, Paul says this. He says, Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. So there's a justice reversal, and God brings about justice. In Romans 3 it says that God could be just, he could judge sin, pour out his wrath on sin, and he could be justifier of those who not get their lives together, but those who have faith in Jesus, who hung in my place and yours on the tree, becoming a curse for you and for me so that we could be redeemed. There's a reversal for all those who by faith trust in Jesus and what he's done. There's another reversal, another couple reversals. There's economic and political reversals. In chapter 8, verses 1 and 2, we see first the economic, that King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman. So he was a wealthy guy. She got all the estate. And then verse 2, the king took off his signet ring. That symbolized authority, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and he presented it to Mordecai. He becomes second in command, and Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. Haman was large and in charge. Haman had a plan. He was going to do away with Mordecai and the Jews. God reverses all of that. And economically, Esther, God pours it into her bank account, if you will. And Mordecai, rather than being impaled on the tree or the gallows, he's now made second in command. These are not promises of, this is not prosperity gospel. This is not, hey, you keep your nose clean and God owes you and he'll reverse all your finances. That's not what this is saying. What this is doing is displaying God's authority and ability to do whatever he pleases. As Job says, no purpose of yours can be thwarted. And God can bless his people how he wants. There are also legal reverses. In chapter 8, verse 8, the king seals with his signet ring. Here's the deal. Here's the dilemma for the king. We're not allowed to revoke or reverse laws of the Medes and Persians. You weren't allowed to do that. They're irrevocable. And it's already been, with my signet ring, authorized to kill all the Jews on a certain day. He says, I can't undo that. So he goes to Esther and Mordecai, and he says, now you guys write another decree. You guys figure this out. In the king's name, on behalf of the Jews, it seems best to you, and seal it with the king's signet ring, for no document written in the king's name and sealed with his ring can be revoked. Next slide. The king's edict, so they did write one, it granted that the Jews in every city gave them the right to assemble, to protect themselves, and to destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of any nationality or province who might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. So the Jews he couldn't revoke that they were authorized to be killed, but he could say, but you have the right to assemble, come together, think gladiator, and they come together, whatever comes out of that gate, we're going to stick together. And they can defend themselves. We know that it was self-defense when they do kill some who came to attack them, because they don't plunder any of the property. And so this is the way they did it. So law 1 was anyone can go kill the Jews. But law 2 made most of the people afraid to go kill the Jews. So law 1 was, if you will, very much weakened. And then when the Jews did defend themselves, the fear of the Jews went throughout the land. And God preserved and protected his people in that way with this legal reversal. There's also emotional and spiritual reversal. In chapter 4, verse 3, when that edict of Haman went out that they'd all be killed, there was mourning, there was weeping, they were confused, they were beside themselves. But in chapter 8, verses 16 and 17, we see it became a time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province, in every city to which the edict of the king came, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, feasting, celebrating. And then, not only for them, it spilled out for a spiritual reversal for those who didn't name the name Yahweh, who were pagan Persians. Many people of other nationalities became Jews because fear of the Jews had seized them. Now, what that means is they became God-fearers. They became to have the fear of Yahweh, fear of the covenant-keeping God of the Jews. And so, if you will, they were brought into the faith. And so God, when it all seemed hopeless and it seemed like God wasn't there or didn't care or wasn't going to do anything, look at how unthwartable he is. As Tony Evans says, God has an override button. In fact, one of the lessons here for us in our day, when we get so just unnerved and panicky about which political group is going to be in power, let me tell you, read your Bible. God doesn't need one party or the other. God doesn't need it to be a monarchy, a democracy, a totalitarian regime. God will work his purposes no matter who is in charge. See that. He can override, he can use. He calls Cyrus his servant, and Cyrus is not one of God's people. And here he uses Xerxes in all his following his glands and following the moment to authorize the reversal to protect his people and to bring forward his promises. Got to keep moving here. So not only are his purposes unthwartable, but I want us to just marvel. we talk about for such a time as this, I want us to see such a timing as his, as God's timing. Just note in the section that we're in chapter 6, verse 1. Remember Haman has got the gallows built. He can't wait to come in and say, I want to hang Mordecai on him. And it says, that night, the king couldn't sleep. And then while his friends, after he had paraded Mordecai around, while his friends were talking about his downfall, he didn't have time to concoct a plan because the king's servants, the eunuchs, came and they took him to the next banquet. And while he was there, Esther, at just the right time, says, well, here's the deal. My life is threatened, and so are my people's. And the king says, who is it that did it? And she says, Haman. And the king goes out. But when he comes back, it says, just at the time that the king returns. This is not coincidence. This is providence. Because what's the king to think when he walks back in and he sees Haman, who's just trying to beg for his life? He's falling on the couch. In their time, no Persian, if the king leaves, no Persian should be anywhere near the queen or anyone in the king's harem, ever. They should leave the room as well. He stayed in the room. He begged for his life. He's just falling down begging for mercy. But I believe the king, whether he thought, you're trying to hit on my wife, whether he's thinking that or he's thinking, you're giving me an out because now I can kill you, but even though I'm the one who authorized what I'm killing you for, the decree against the Jews. But notice the timing of God displaying his providence. And let me say this. When you and I are in times where we know we're in a time of suffering, we're in a time of confusion, we're in a time of waiting, like, where are you, God? You seem absent. You don't seem, the wait can seem too painful and too pointless. We can be tempted to grow cynical, take matters into our own hands, be tempted to sin to get what is ours. I want to show you Ecclesiastes 8, 12 and 13. Because Haman is a good example of this, and this is a good word to us. He says, although a sinner does evil 100 times and may lengthen his life. In other words, he's getting away with it. Still I know that it will be well for those who fear God, who fear him openly. But it will not be well for the evil man, and he will not lengthen his days like a shadow because he does not fear God. I want to invite the Kaufmans up. I'm going to let you use, if we can just maybe just stand, leave it in here, but stand. I'm going to have them share in just a moment. Again, like I said, we can be tempted where are you, God? And we're waiting, and there's suffering, and there's uncertainty. Let God's timing in Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection be, Philip Yancey calls it a template of hope for you and for me. He says this in an article written at the end of 2020. He called it the longest year. He reflects on 2020. And he says, the Bible never discounts the reality of suffering, but it does add the key word temporary. And although New Testament writers offer no real explanation for suffering, they keep pointing to Jesus, especially his death and resurrection, as a kind of template for hope. He says, Good Friday demonstrates that God is not indifferent to our pain. Jesus went to the cross. God, too, is personally acquainted with grief. Holy Saturday, when nothing was happening and it was silent, it seemed like all was lost. Holy Saturday hints that we may go through seasons of confusion and seeming defeat, such as characterized much of 2020. But Easter Sunday holds out the strong promise that in the end, suffering will not prevail. Satan thought he defeated God through the death of his son Jesus on the cross. The Romans and Jews thought they rid themselves of this disturbance, this nuisance to their agenda when they exercised power and they hung Jesus on that cursed tree. But God has override. God is a God of reversals and perfect timing. He's a God of resurrection. So I want to encourage you with this. When God seems absent and your situation feels desperate, trace his hand and his perfect timing in Esther's day and trust him in ours. Now, I've asked the Kaufmans up because I want you to think before they share, so what? How's God calling you and me to live out this book of Esther? He's a God of redemptive reversals. He's a God of providential such timing, but he also uses unlikely instruments. He uses more people for such a time as this, like Mordecai, than he does Esther. You may not be an Esther, but you may be a Mordecai who's encouraging the Esther, who's in the spotlight, who's in the moment proper, if you will. But he says, who knows? But God has located you for such a time and a place as this. I want you to hear this, and then I'm going to have them share. God's locating you for such a time as this involves such a timing as his. Do not miss God's placing and purposing of you. You're such a time as this. You're such a place as this. Because each of us is sovereignly located. I've asked them to share just for a few minutes. We've had them share before, but they've had a lot going on that's quite Esther-y these past few weeks. And I want you to be encouraged by them, and then I'll come up and close us. I'll just kind of sit back a little bit.
Katie's going to set the scene a little bit, just kind of like Buddy did at the beginning today. So Katie's going to set the scene a little bit before we kind of move on, okay?
And I think we've got some pictures. Is that true? Do we have
Yes.
pictures? Okay. So we really feel God's presence with us and his timing. And I love what Buddy said, don't mistake God's silence for absence. 9 years ago, try not to be too emotional. 9 years ago, we were moving away from a really special youth group ministry that we had been a part of in a special church down in Dallas. And we were coming to move up to the suburbs, which was never a place that we saw ourselves. We're not very suburban in a lot of ways. But we felt God calling us to be present and intentional about where we lived our daily life, and that he wanted us to come and be a part of the community that Jordan was teaching in so that we could be more present in the students' lives. And so 9 years ago, yesterday, that was what our house looked like. We were coming in, we had signed the contract, and 9 years ago yesterday, God was positioning us for something that only he knew was coming. We renovated our house and invited a couple kids that had been special students to kind of come on over, and we'll host you in our backyard. And I don't know if you can see, the backyard was not a place that you could really host yet. But through that, God has moved from a couple kids coming and helping us paint our ceilings and hang out with sodas in the backyard to the start of Tinner, which a lot of you know about, but Jordan will explain a little bit more in a minute. And we saw God's hand moving specifically in specific ways. Our desire had been meant to move overseas to minister in a coffee house church plant in a multicultural community through providing a gathering place where God's presence would be evident to allow others to experience him more fully. And although the Lord shut that down and moved us to Allen instead, he provided a place where God's presence would be evident in the community to allow his presence to be felt. There's another picture. During the beginning of COVID, we weren't able to have Tinner, and again, we felt like God was like being silent a little bit, like, okay, where do we go from here? But we tore down walls in our house because we knew that the kids would be coming back eventually, and so we took out a front room in preparation. Again, God working behind the scenes, knowing that we would need that space when Tinner started again, and just seeing him move things together. And so we also want to point out that we've tried to do this as a family, and we really see the importance of ministry as a family, not just as a solo. A lot of times in Christian culture, we tend to have his ministry and her ministry, and then the kids have their thing. And just even through the current circumstances, even having unbelievers come up and recognize, like, what you're doing, we're so glad that you're doing it as a family. And a lot of that was the relocation. So that's to set the scene a little.
So a lot of the things that we did when we moved here was just being intentional, being purposeful about coming here and moving here to a place that we never really wanted to live, and now that we can't really see ourselves living somewhere else.
We're really glad.
The irony of God, right? Don't tell God never move somewhere. We figured Colorado. Doesn't that feel like a better fit for us? But another thing is just being present and available, and just the ministry that there is in this culture of just being there for people and just suffering alongside people, loving alongside people, and just not even having to cram things down their throats and just be so overwhelming with words. Like sometimes just hanging out with people and spending time with them intentionally and purposefully, God can use that. So we started with Young Life when Chris Trevathan continued to bother us and pester us, and then we realized, okay, we really need to do this. And it's been a slow progression, and then we realized, hey, a lot of my students are not in Young Life, and so we wanted to kind of branch off and do something with Young Life, but separate from Young Life, called Tinner, which is Tuesday dinner. We thought Saturday dinner, sinner wasn't really a good idea, but so we did Tuesday. And just the idea of being present with people and living through the good and through the bad, and just being there. Someone mentioned a book, The Gospel Comes with a House Key, I believe. We mentioned that one time. We read through that book. It's just how God uses opening up your homes and opening up your hearts to other people and just being available. I went through a really difficult time. I think I cried on the stage a few years ago. I'm going to cry again this year. It's great. I just cry all the time. Stop bringing me up here. And so I built, in my sorrow, just kind of built a deck. And it sounds kind of dumb, but it was this whole Field of Dreams moment where it was like, it wasn't like a gallows or whatever, but we built this little deck. And it was, for me, just kind of symbolic of, we felt like God was going to bring people in and to use our backyard for ministry and whatnot. And so in tears, I built this deck, knowing that God would do something good, and seeing God use things through even just building that. And now we just wanted to create a really safe space for people to come in to deal with hardships. Last Sunday, Buddy shared about a student who passed away who was my student. Her name was Burju Hesar. And she was a super special student to me. She was a super special student in our IB community. We love that kid, and she was an amazing, amazing kid. And her loss was felt so much throughout our community, our school. She was one of our Tinner students who came to Tinner pretty regularly. She was a student who was going to go to Spain with us as well. There were just so many layers of relationship with this kid, a student that we loved. And so many of the students just loved so deeply. And so Buddy mentioned that last week, and that was actually the student that I had in class. And so we've been mourning a lot and grieving a lot. It's been very hard and very challenging for us going through this, and it has been for the students. While we were in church, we got several text messages. We just mentioned on the Tinner thing, if y'all ever need anything, feel free to text us or whatnot. We found out right before senior prom too, which was very hard. But anyway, so we got a message from students. Who said, "Can we use your front hose in your house?" I was like, what? They're like, we went down to the creek and we just started throwing rocks in the creek, and and our feet got dirty, and we just wanted to wash our feet off, and we just thought of your house. Can we do that? And we're like, yeah, totally. And then they said, can we just hang out at your house? And so we were going to have lunch with the Boisvers, and we took it to go and went home and just hung out with these kids and cried with these kids and loved on these kids and kind of grieved together with them. And so it was a very, very difficult thing, but God's reversal, right? And I love that imagery, just God's reversal. And what God did with that is bringing just glory for his kingdom, even despite tragedy. Buddy talked about providence, not coincidence. It's not a coincidence that we're here. It's not a coincidence that she was our student. It's not a coincidence that I'm teaching IB Spanish with some of these students. So we grieved with a lot of these kids, and we mourned with them. And so we had Tinner planned on Tuesday of this past week, and the theme that we planned 4 months ago was pain. Like, how do you deal with pain? And if you could live a life without pain, would you choose to do so? And we just feel like that was God preparing hearts and preparing us, something that we didn't know. And it was on the very day of her funeral that we actually had Tinner scheduled from 4 months ago. And so Katie busted out with a cool hijab, and I wore a sweet little hat, and we went to the mosque just for the students for Burju's funeral. Afterwards we went to the closed casket ceremony, and it was just very quiet. And afterwards we were just all crying outside and hugging each other, and we had planned to do Tinner, and a lot of y'all had helped us and come alongside us and just provided some money for pizza. And we got 15 pizzas for kids, and even before we had said something about 5:30, and we got text message, can we just come over? We just need to be somewhere safe, and we need to be somewhere where we can grieve. And so
they actually beat us home.
They beat us home, yeah. So we're like, hey, look, a bunch of kids in our yard. This is crazy. And we love it, honestly. And so the kids came over, we had pizza, and we shared a little bit about what Burju meant to us and just what a special kid that she was. And even as you were talking about people from many backgrounds, people from many nations, that's what was filling in our backyard. It's people from different nations, different countries, from India to, what was the other one?
Ethiopia.
India to Ethiopia, just people from all over the world who are sitting in our backyard. And it was a beautiful moment, and it started to rain, of course, because that's just fits the vibe. It started to rain, and Burju loved rain, and so we had to go inside. So you can see these are a bunch of the kids. We had about 40, 50 kids come that day. Just share a little bit, eat some pizza together. And it started raining, and we, a year ago, started tearing down walls to bring kids in, and so we kind of were hesitant about it, or like, all right, well, we kind of have to. So we started moving kids in. I don't know if y'all have that next picture of just a bunch of people hanging out in the house, and we talked about pain and suffering and how can God be present. It quickly switched to how can God be present. And it was super cool. A couple students who are believers really shared very boldly about their faith and what they believed in the Lord. And we have people from, like I said, all different countries and different backgrounds. Yeah, go for it.
And with those students, it was really neat because God had moved them into place ahead of time. One of them had lost her dad and had built credibility with the other students that were there, and she was actually coming back as a college kid. And so she had already graduated, but she was able to be there that night, and so she was able to speak to them with the credibility of them knowing that she had gone through that loss. And then the other kid was her cousin, and he has a lot of credibility as one of our seniors, and so he had already moved them into position to be able to speak to these kids through that. Sorry.
And God can use just being available and being intentional in relationships that we have, the people around us, wherever you are. It doesn't matter if you're staying at home and minister to your neighbors, love on people, and just be intentional in doing it. And y'all have been such a blessing to us in so many different ways. Like we couldn't do what we do without y'all bringing paper plates and silverware and drinks and pizzas. And it seems insignificant, but it's something that God can use. So thank y'all for pairing up with us, and especially with praying, just that we would be present with these kids. And we have some stuff that we want to do to bless seniors this year. So if it's something that y'all are interested in helping out with, we would be honored to do that as well. So thank you guys for supporting us. And I went way over, but I don't care.
No, that's all right. Yeah. So hold on. So Nathan, I'm going to have y'all come up so you can lead us. Normally, we turn around and thank God for them and pray. I'm just going to ask you, would you pray for all God's work in our hearts, that we would be attentive to wherever, sort of that, what's my such a time as this?
Yeah.
And then Nathan's going to lead us just in the chorus. So would you stand? And Jordan will pray, and then Nathan will lead us in singing.
Jesus, we thank you that you're present in our good times and in our suffering. You love us so much, and you orchestrate so much behind the scenes that we don't understand and we never can imagine until that moment comes. We thank you for the positions that you've put us in, whether it's at home or at work or at school, whether it's a VW bus group or if it's just hanging out with other people around the block. You set those relationships up for a purpose. Sometimes it's easier to see than others, but we know that you are the God who orchestrates all things behind the scenes in just such beautiful, rich ways. Help us to see the people around us who need love, who need you, and help us to remember that a lot of times it doesn't take words to share the gospel. A lot of times it's a meal or just praying with people or simply just listening. And I pray that we would be sensitive to your spirit, to see just the people in our lives who need you. We need you. Help us to be part of a little bit of your presence in the lives of others who may not ever recognize you, who may never recognize you, who may not recognize you for 10 years. But help us to be a part of your grand scheme of redeeming creation, that we could be one day in heaven rejoicing with people who we never knew came to know you, and that maybe we played a little bit of part in their lives. So be with us as we grieve and as we rejoice, knowing that you are good in all things. Amen.
Can we sing this one more time together? All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I made, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life. So all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I make, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. You guys are dismissed.